Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Amir Karam, board certified facial plastic surgeon and founder of Karam MD Skin. I specialize in facial rejuvenation, which basically means I help people look as young as they feel. Today is going to be a really fun topic actually, that is a topic that comes up all the time. And that is, how do I know if I am ready to have a facelift? So what I thought I'd do is I'd give you 5 reasons or 5 indications that you might be ready to have a facelift. So before we get into what are those 5, let's talk really quickly about what defines a young looking face, because then you can set that aside and look at that relative to where you are and then decide if it all makes sense. So what are features of a young looking jawline and neck, which are the targets, by the way, of a facelift? The features of a jawline in a young person is firmness. There's no waves of soft tissue laxity over this area, which we call jowling. There is no laxity in the neck. The neck is nice and firm. On profile, you see almost like a 90-degree. Now, of course, some people, it could be a little bit fuller or less full, but overall, there is a firmness and an excellent contour of the jawline and neck area. A little bit higher, you see the area of the midface. The midface is positioned well above the outer cheekbone, and further up, the outer brow area is nice and elevated and it's not crowding around the eyes. So those features combined are the consistent features of a young looking face. Now, as the face ages, and this can happen honestly in the late 30s, it can happen in the 40s, 50s, sometimes people hang on till late 50s and even 60s. But the bell-shaped curve, the time when you see it most commonly happening, is right around perimenopause, menopause, when there's changes in the body's hormone structure, and for whatever reason, it seems to be a trigger for the changes that come with aging. And what are those changes look like? Basically, what you start to see is a downward drift of the soft tissues of the face, the fascia of the face that starts at the level of the lateral brow. The midface starts to come down. You start to see a little bit of hollowing in the middle of the midface, and then the nasolabial folds get deeper. The jawline becomes more loose and lax and heavy with jowling that you can see on the profile view, and on the front view, you start to see the face becoming more and more square. The neck becomes heavy, and all of these changes are fundamentally happening. So now let's break down when you know you're ready to have procedure done. So number 1, when you look in the mirror and you find yourself literally doing this all the time, right? So when you're doing this and you're like, wow, I look a lot like I used to, I'm starting to see my young self, or the self that I envision myself being, reflected in the mirror when I do this. That's a very common move that a lot of people make. And if you don't do this, what I would say is try it, and this will give you a good indication if your tissues have come down enough to where doing this actually makes it better, which is basically mimicking the direction of a vertically oriented facelift. This is, for example, like the vertical restore is moving the face in that very direction. So how do you do that? You put your finger right here at your outer cheekbone, your thumb at your jawline, right, the angle there, and then on both ends you kind of pull up. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see what that's doing. And for people who are at a certain stage of aging, that move, that change, is looks like heaven. It's like, oh my God, I want that, right? So okay, so that's when you start doing that repetitively, there's changes that you're looking forward to. Indication number 2, when you start disliking your photographs, your videos, and for the most part, you start to avoid taking them. What we see a lot in our patients is basically there comes a time when they don't feel as comfortable, as secure, as confident in their photos. In fact, many times when they see them, they almost wonder who that person is that they're seeing, in that. Now that's a little bit more extreme as you get further into the aging continuum, but when you start not enjoying being photographed, selfies, or being part of pictures, family photos, friends photos, whatever it is, you don't like the images that you're seeing, many times that's indicating that there is that facial shape component that is changing on you and is becoming less and less recognizable. And that is oftentimes a confusing point that a lot of people can't correlate with why this is suddenly starting to happen, but it's usually happening because as the face starts to drift downward, the jaws become heavier and ultimately not quite the way you have always looked, literally for your entire life. And so that becomes a point where you try to avoid photos and things like that. We see it very commonly. Indication number 3, and this is kind of a continuum of what we just talked about. The underlying desire is to look as young as you feel, right? And ultimately you want to look like yourself, just simply the way you feel on the inside. For most of us, now let's go through a little exercise. Take a moment and close your eyes and picture in your mind how old you actually are. Not how old you are on paper, but how old you are. For most of us, at certain advanced ages, for most of us, we feel like we're like in our 30s or even 20s. Aging chronologically on our license, looks like we're 50, we're 60, we're 70, but yet if we're healthy and we're living right and all that stuff, in our mind's eye, we feel young. We feel like we're in our 30s. So what your desire is, and that's the picture you have of yourself. So what you're wanting is, you want to go right back to that. You want your outside, the person that photographed, the person in that mirror, you want that person to be that younger person. And that's really, at the end of the day, what the principal reason why people undergo these type of surgeries is, because they want to bring those two pieces back to the way they look and the way they feel back together. Indication number 4 is a continuum of all the changes that we just discussed, in primarily affecting the neck. Now, when people start to see their neck sag, a lot of times they don't even realize that their face is sagging. Many times the face actually looks pretty good. They're like, okay, I can live with my face, but I don't like my neck because it's, sagging, got some crepiness, got some, looseness under there. And for a lot of people, a youthful neck is a very sensual, very sexy, very positive thing. So when they see things starting to change there, they're thinking neck lift, not facelift. They're thinking, I need to do, some type of treatments for my neck. But here's the deal. The fascia in the face is directly connected with the muscles in the neck. The platysmal muscle in the neck comes up and attaches to the fascia in the face. So as the face starts to descend, the neck doesn't have anything to hold it up anymore. So as a result, the neck starts to sag. And that's why when you do this with your fingers, and you can do this, put your fingers on your mandible and pull up, you can see when you do that, your neck completely improves. So lifting the face in a vertically oriented direction will improve the neck as well. And that is an indication for needing a facelift, not needing a neck lift, but actually needing a vertically oriented facelift. So that's a very, very important point of view. The changes in your neck are actually a symptom of changes that are happening above the neck into the face. That's indication number 4. Indication number 5, and this is probably the most important one that you need to really recognize. When you're ready. When you feel fundamentally ready to have the procedure done. Because all the things we just mentioned, these are anatomic indications, right? They are the changes that are happening. But just because a change is happening doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you to do it at that right time. It might not bother you that much. It might not be the right time financially. It might not be the right time in your life. So when you fundamentally feel ready, and you've got the changes that are consistent with aging that would benefit from a facelift, that's when you go forward. That's when you want to proceed. And I always tell people, it's like, when you do this and that looks better, and when you, on the inside, you're like, I'm done, I don't want to mess with this anymore, I want to just achieve this, that's when you're ready to move forward. And that's when I feel comfortable working on a patient, when I know that those two things are together. The anatomic stuff is up to me, the emotional part and the decision is up to you. So that's a very, very important piece to understand, that this isn't just like a 50,000 mile checkup, you have to do this to your car, or like at age 50 you have to get a colonoscopy. This is not, you have to get something like this done just because you're at a certain age or because you have a certain level of changes. It's only based on your desire. Because at the end of the day, the thing that this whole thing is about, vertical restore or facelift or whatever is to fundamentally make you feel better and make you feel whole again. and make you feel comfortable with the person that's facing the outside and the person on the inside. So it's an emotional positive lift that's actually happening, more impactfully than just simply the physical anatomic changes that are happening. So take those 5 things. They don't all have to be in place, but the main ones are the fact that this and your emotional readiness for it. And you put those two together, do your homework. I always tell patients, obviously, you're familiar with me, but do your homework, do your research. Make sure you put your face in the hands of somebody who is an expert in this particular area, because there's nothing worse than going through a bunch of downtime and procedure and cost and expense and coming out either being dissatisfied with the outcome because it wasn't enough or made you look a little, pulled or different or whatever it is. Make sure you study enough before and afters to know that you're in the right hands with a surgeon that can achieve the look that you're going for. And that's why we personally put out so much information out there to give people a really clear idea of what our practice is about. And you should have the same level of scrutiny with any other practice that you're considering. Keep it also in mind that at any age, whether you're in your late 30s, 40s, or 50s, 60s, 70s, these indications participate. And then we had just a couple really great videos on trends that tie some of this stuff together as well for 2022 and 2023. So have a look at those as well to get a little bit more insight into the various options that are available for people who feel this way. All right, everyone, so I hope you enjoyed the topic. If you have any questions or comments, drop them below. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more content like this, and like it if you enjoyed this topic, and share it with some friends and family, and let's get the conversation started. All right, everyone, until next time, Dr. Amir Karam.